Lore in Destiny makes no sense, while also being one of the best parts of the series. So today we will cover what makes good lore stands out above the rest and why lore is important, because I think we can all agree at its best, Destiny has some of the best stories. Don't know what I'm talking about? Grab a sody pop and stay at least 6 feet away from my voice as we dive deep into lore, and more specifically, lore in Destiny. Some footage in this video is from players around the community. Their links will be in the description of this video, as well as the music too. If this channel keeps popping up in your recommended feed, feel free to drop a like and a sub to the channel. It means a lot. Thank you. We're getting close to 70K. I appreciate you. Let's talk about what makes good lore and why lore is so important to games that have an invested interest. You see, the world cannot be without some kind of story of how you got there, right? What transpired before you, before an area, before an NPC, before a boss. All of this has to have meaning and purpose if the developers want it to, and thankfully Destiny does have a heavy invested interest in telling us these backstories in the grimoire and lore tabs found in the game. Good lore also needs to tell the story without giving away too much and leaving some areas open to interpretation. It's why we have so much fun speculating as to what's to come next, and it's the unreliable narrators that make us guess if lore books are telling us the full scope of what is happening. I mean, look at what happened with the book Truth to Power. Everyone thought that reaching 999 power and soloing Destiny's Shattered Throne dungeon would give fans the 15th wish to the Dreaming City, when in all reality, that part of the book was written by an unreliable trickster, Savathun. See what I mean? Character and purpose build the world and get us invested in the gameplay. Good lore also tells us about location history, how they came to be, characters in the world, stories, and bosses' stories. So I'm reaching further into a different game's bag of lore, and you probably guessed it. No, not that bag of lore. I'm talking about a game that is very different from Destiny, but shares similarity in the lore. Dark Souls, but also Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Sekiro, and soon to be Elden Ring. Souls has been talked about hundreds of times on this platform, but my main reason to talk about it is because the lore is almost a reward system in the game. Let's use the example of Gwyn, the first game's final boss. Gwyn is supposed to be the Lord of Light, the one who ruled over Uldren, the one who discovered humanity and other life forms. Gwyn tried to preserve the Age of Fire, or his own Age of Life, even throwing his own soul into the First Flame to keep it going and preserving the age and thus altering the timeline. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but just keep playing along with me. Gwyn knows we are eventually going to come and defeat him, but he wants to hold on to this dying world anyways because he can't let go of the world he ruled over that whole time. That's some deep stuff, and it makes you question if you are truly the hero who will push the world into the next stage, or the villain who is killing to let an age of darkness take over. Now take all of that and scratch it, put yourself back in the room with Gwyn without anything I just told you, and now it becomes a whole lot less of an experience. It becomes just like any other fight in the game. Almost disappointing for a final boss that you heard so much about be in this tiny cave with nothing but ash around him. Getting back to Destiny, let's look at lore that is rewarding as well. Oryx, the Taken King. Oryx, originally named Orash, was originally female with her two sisters Zero and Sathona, who would become Savathun and Xivu Arath. The three sisters found the worm gods deep in the seas. The worm gods, who drew their power from darkness, offered them gifts of strength for Zero, who was now Xivu Arash, knowledge for Sathona, who became Savathun, and inquisitiveness for Arash, who became Oryx with an A. But they would have to be hosts for the worm's larvae, and if they disobeyed the worm gods, they would be consumed by that larvae. Later down the line, Oryx found that the worms had tricked them and were biting off more than they could chew, and Oryx, with the combined powers of now his sisters, killed Akka, one of the worm gods, and became Oryx, now with an O. Oryx learned the power to take. Now, down the line, when we finally meet Oryx, he uses his ability to take to make the enemy race the Taken. It makes that feeling of sending him off the Dreadnaught and wielding his soul in the weapon Touch of Malice feel that much nicer. Destiny rewards that time commitment to the lore nicely and lets us engage in all the quips it has to offer. However, at the beginning of the video, I did say Destiny lore makes no sense, right? Well, let's talk about the downside of the game's lore too. So I use the example of Lord Gwyn from Dark Souls and the Taken King Oryx as an example of lore done right, but that's also because they share something: the challenge to rise above them. Yes, lore is rewarding when you put the time in to learn it, but lore is even more rewarding when the challenge of the boss fight of that area becomes apparent. Oryx makes the player want to know more about him, appreciate what just went down, why you're there, why the mechanics of the fight are the way they are, and reflect on your victory with the rewards that feel deserving of the challenge. Gwyn is the same way, if you don't know how to parry, as he provides a ridiculously tough time and shows his lightning wielding, grabbing, and punishing attacks, forcing the player to learn before they can conquer, thus solidifying these lore figures as the way they were written into the world. Sometimes this does not hit the mark, and I can't think of a better example than Ghaul in Destiny 2's Warmind. Warmind has brought some awesome stories such as the Whisper and the 2-year-long puzzle, as well as a raid layer. But what stands out is the strike boss and main antagonist of the DLC, Ghaul. Ghaul is a worm god, much like the worm god that Oryx with an A defeated to become Oryx with an O. Ghaul has some cool lore, like how him and Nokris, another strike boss in the DLC, fled from the worm gods and the three sisters, and how Ghaul made a raid boss Golgoroth to try to stop Oryx. But while Golgoroth and Oryx have some amazing mechanics that set them apart and make them feel amazing to conquer, Ghaul has almost none of these. Ghaul tried to take down Rasputin and we stopped him just by shooting. No mechanics, no real challenge, just some bullets. I get that in a game like Destiny, not everything can be that grandiose fight with a bunch of mechanics and hardships, but I want to stress that this is a character that is a literal god, and nowadays he gets killed before the fight even starts. The only cool thing I like with Ghaul is that he does manifest his soul into the Whisper of the Worm and can be heard in the mission The Whisper as well.
There is no light here.
Just like how Oryx put his soul in the Touch of Malice. But I want to stress again how this was poorly executed and does not encourage players to dive deep like other parts of the game. I think that a way to circumvent this would have been to make Ghaul some kind of raid boss or a boss with some engaging mechanics. This feel of lore not meeting the expectations set up for them can be felt in a good chunk of Destiny's content too, like Nokris, Ghaul, and Hashladun to name a few. So how do we add that epic feeling of lore tying to gameplay and getting more players invested in that lore? The answer is in the fight themselves. So after sinking so much time into games like Souls and others, and spending even more time playing through Destiny over the years, I have come up with what I think is the answer to making lore and gameplay reward the time and dedication. The answer to this question can be found in one of the most praised games ever, The Witcher. To keep it short, The Witcher hunts monsters for other people, but it's not just as simple as run to a monster, swing at it. No, instead you have to research that monster, find out its strengths, weaknesses, and how it came to be if you were to conquer it and reap the rewards of your bounty. This hits all the marks for what Dark Souls does too. Gwyn is a Lord of Light, and he wields lightning, but he is also a melee enemy. You can then prep by wearing lightning resistant armor and by parrying his attacks for an easier fight. This rewards players on the first front. This is something I wish was in Destiny. How great would it be if you fought the Garden of Salvation raid boss, Sanctified Mind, knowing that in the lore, solar had been the only thing that he truly hated. So solar weapons in the raid did a little bit more damage to him. Now that's one way to solve the first level of lore, but what about the next? Well, this is where the challenge of the fight and the reward system must fit in. This is something I have discussed a lot on stream, but something I want to bring here as well. Axis and Wrath of the Machine challenge mode did this perfectly. Wrath of the Machine awarded players with Siva key fragments and cache keys. Fragments were grinded by just playing the raid, and once you had enough fragments, you could make a key to open up extra chests on repeated playthroughs, and the fragments were also to be used to reroll armor from the raid, thus being a nice reward for constant play. But I want to take a moment and talk about challenge mode. While normal mode Axis had Axis moving around the room for you to slam him and do some damage, there was also a mechanic that stood out. There were plates around the room. These plates intrigued players and gave them the option of slamming them, with the payoff that if you did, your team would have their super refreshed for use for damage on Axis. This was just an option for normal mode, but challenge mode on the other hand required you to do this. This gave players the option for the research in the surrounding area to pay off with more supers, but on the hardest of hard stages, the players had to use this mechanic to reap the rewards from their hardships. The great challenge of fights like Axis and the great rewards and payoffs are what Destiny is missing for the epic scale of fights to make players want to invest in the lore. It's something that has been addressed in the director's cut via Luke Smith, but something that absolutely needs to be here, because there would be no invested interest in channels like My Name is Bife, Myelin, and hell, even here, if there was no hardships to reap the rewards of these areas, of these boss fights. There would just be a hollow shell of the game itself and a bunch of stories that would make you wonder how anyone ever struggled to beat these bosses. It would make you question the lore and make the game one-dimensional, and I don't want Destiny to fall deeper into that path. So here's to hoping for the future where the game looks to tackle this challenge. And honestly, here's to the future of this channel as well. Because if you did enjoy this video, a like would be greatly appreciated, as well as a subscription. You can follow me on Twitch, where we dive deep into these topics and more. That link will be at the top of the description as well. Anyways, enjoy the bloopers, and here's to 70K as we approach it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
Okay, someone got tenor already. Alright, let's win. We're winning this shit.
Bro, man. Bro, what the f is this?
I thought you...
Dude, it's an alien, bro.
What is this?
Oh my god.
Look at it.
Yo, I got the biggest scare of my life.
I'm not fucking peeking, I'm dead, man.
R&D fight.
Hello, please!
Oh, my Destiny 2. Oh, please. Sonic, this game is... Oh my god. I can't, dude. I can't with this game. I cannot.
Oh my god, he's got a Queensbreaker. Ah, the sound is so loud. That's so loud. It's a new perk.
I say we're just streamers whining, bro. Stop. He's just really good at the game. We just have to outplay him.
Oh my god.
Bungie, what the f are you doing with your game, man?
Oh my god.
Oh, bad idea, bad idea, bad idea. Huh?
What? Bro!
Clip it.
It's 3 symbols, so it's 3 houses.
Got knocked on the map, let it.